Hello guys, this is me, Tim from TJ Wrestling, back again with a new series, and this time I'm going to be reviewing the retro Smackdown from the Ruthless Aggression Era from 2002-2006, starting with the brand extension. The reason I am reviewing this era in wrestling, especially this brand, Smackdown, for two reasons. Firstly, I haven't really experienced much of this era, unlike the Attitude Era, which I know a lot about. And two, I didn't grow up in this era, so I don't know much about it. But two, I would like to experience some of these moments and see where a lot of the superstars from today originate from this era. And also to basically open your eyes up to this great era as well, because a lot of great things happened. Also, SmackDown is a great hub of wrestling, and basically I didn't want to do Raw because Raw is quite mainstream, and basically SmackDown was at its peak back then. It's actually great today as well. I can't deny that. And yeah, basically that's it. So now I'm going to do my summary, and basically, yeah, I'll be doing these hopefully as many as possible. There's over 200 episodes to review, so yeah, better get started right now. The Ruthless Aggression Era, what a time in wrestling, where the WWE transitioned from the Attitude Era, a boom for the WWE, into the more laid back but mad time for wrestling in terms of superstars, the Ruthless Aggression Era. In talking about it, it's impossible not to mention the great link between SmackDown, because in my opinion, SmackDown was at its absolute peak back then. The greatest superstars in the world were on SmackDown, especially the wrestlers, and a lot of the superstars we know from today were there as well. The origination of the World Heavyweight Championship, which was from WCW, was defended solely on SmackDown at this time, after Brock Lesnar refused to defend his title on Raw. So this show was very much its own unique identity, and it really ruled the roost in terms of wrestling at this time. Great superstars appeared at this time, such as Undertaker, John Cena, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, so Edge. These superstars went on to rule this time in era of wrestling, especially Eddie Guerrero, who ruled very well. And yeah, these wrestlers went on to do great things. So it all originated back from this Ruthless Aggression Era time. Now let's look at a bit of history before this first 2002 draft, because at this time the Attitude Era was winding down. The Invasion storyline that had run in 2001 had run its course, and basically WWE was left with a roster that was twice its original size. So what they decided to do was hold a draft where Mr. McMahon, who would take charge of SmackDown as GM, and Ric Flair would take charge of Raw. Basically what they do would select one wrestler each in turn, and basically cut the roster in half and basically put them on two shows. The idea was to give wrestlers more chances to wrestle, and also to create two kind of warring brands. So we'll see if this was a failure or success. It all came from this very first draft, which would continue on until 2011, I believe. So without further ado, let's look at the 2002 draft. This Raw takes place on the 25th of March 2002, and basically featured all of the superstars gathered in one place waiting to be announced. At the start of the show, we are greeted with Mr. McMahon, who comes out and basically says, you know guys, we're going to hold in a draft, way! And basically what happens is he announces his number one draft first. So, to a raucous crowd in Penn State, we see The Rock make his debut as the number one draft on SmackDown. He will be important to follow later to see what happens with him. Rock is ecstatic to be here and basically puts down McMahon, who's still in that sort of heel phase, not quite done with the Attitude Era person, where he's still kind of in the limelight. I think this is interesting to see. I think he bows out quite soon after this, but yeah, at this point in time, Mr. McMahon was still pretty much the head evil boss guy in the company, and The Rock was kind of filling in the role that, well, Stone Cold would have played in the Attitude Era. So I like this little dynamic. The crowd is also electric, but it does kind of ruin the feel later on when we have to hear the "you're an asshole" chant every single time Mr. McMahon comes out to make a draft announcement, which was a little bit dickish by the crowd. After this, we see Ric Flair appear as choosing his #1 draft on Raw. Interestingly enough, he chooses Undertaker as #1 draft to a really pissed off Undertaker. Undertaker, of course, is known for being built by Mr. McMahon, and he was kind of promised by Mr. McMahon to be on SmackDown with him. He's really angry and goes to Mr. McMahon and says, "What's up with this?" He doesn't know. Mr. McMahon throughout the night basically is trying to make promises to as many people as possible. We know he's conniving. We know he's got a heel attitude to him. And so he kind of makes a lot of mistakes in this draft. Basically just doing trying to be basically undermining Ric Flair in taking his picks that he wanted. And in turn, Ric Flair takes the picks that he wanted. Following this segment, we get Mr. McMahon and Kurt Angle in his office. Kurt Angle, who is annoyed at what happened in the first pick, basically somehow convinces Mr. McMahon to take him at #2, saying that he is a very reliable, young, and great wrestler who has a great resume on him, and he will do so well for Mr. McMahon. He's basically going to suck up to Mr. McMahon. You know, it's funny because Kurt Angle is quite a hilarious guy in this episode. He's the comedic kind of role, I suppose, and he's he's the licking ass of Mr. McMahon. So yes, #2 for SmackDown, we get Kurt Angle. Quickly, I'll go. Following a quick match, we cut back to Ric Flair at the stage, who says in a sort of counter move to Mr. McMahon to take the NWO as a collective unit. This is pretty bad for Mr. McMahon, who is kind of put in a desperate position here and basically has to choose someone to fill a role. So he chooses Chris Benoit, a nice workhorse wrestler type of wrestler who will fit great on SmackDown. In a segment that follows, we get the two men, Mr. McMahon and Ric Flair, in the same room. Basically what happens is Ric Flair chooses RVD because of the Intercontinental Championship, so Mr. McMahon decides that he wants a title holder. So he tells Kurt Angle to sanction a match basically with RVD to try and win the Intercontinental Championship later on that night. Also, we get Ric Flair, who chooses Booker T, and Mr. McMahon chooses Edge for SmackDown. In another segment, we see the NWO, who say they will not work for Ric Flair, and they will only work under Mr. McMahon. So it's going to be basically a war, and Ric Flair is kind of cornered in this situation. So he's kind of put in a bad situation here, where his three men will not fight for him. Later on, though, the NWO do get a win, so they do get a bit of momentum going forward. Following another match, we get a little cool segment between Rock and Hollywood Hulk Hogan. I really love the segment. It's probably one of my favourites of the night because it's just a really charismatic thing, and it's foreshadowing their match at WrestleMania 18, which I think is this year. Yeah, it's this year. Really cool little segment. They basically both say that they were made by the fans, and they have a lot of respect for each other, and it's a really nice little promo segment thing. I really liked it. It really pumped me up. And yeah, they're two of the kind of like the shining stars, the two biggest kind of like the fan attractions of this era. Well, at the beginning of the era, and I think it just really got the crowd going. Even though it was backstage, really liked it, and yeah, it's a nice little build for what was to come. After this, we see Hulk Hogan, a big blockbuster name, coming to SmackDown, which is cool, and Rikishi, also along with Devon, one half of the Dudley Boys. While going to Raw, we have Kane, Rob Van Dam, Booker T, Big Show, and also Bubba Ray from the Dudley Boys. And the Dudley Boys are split in half, which is kind of an emotional bit. In our main event, we have Triple H, Chris Jericho, and Stephanie McMahon in a match. And this is very interesting because Triple H basically broke up with Stephanie McMahon, so he's out to get her in this match, and he pretty much does. Chris Jericho is kind of put out early, and basically the kind of unionship that Chris Jericho had and Miss Stephanie McMahon kind of gets a bit messy, and they'll kind of go at it. And then, of course, Triple H basically buries Stephanie McMahon, surprisingly, really goes all out on the moves, then hits a pedigree. He gets rid of Chris Jericho, and then hits a spinebuster and defends and keeps his Undisputed Championship. And also the stipulation displays that Stephanie is gone for the WWE, so she is gone. She's taking an absence. Of course, she'll be back a week later, but for now, she is gone. So
there you go. That was the main event. Basically, Triple H, Chris Jericho were not in the draft as well as McMahon. So basically, I think they will be chosen next week. Which brand they're going to, I'm not sure. Whether Raw or SmackDown, because they weren't in this draft. As well as that, Stone Cold Steve Austin is a free agent, which means he can select with either brand he wants. So it's basically going to be a toss-up where either Miss McMahon or Ric Flair are going to basically go and try and vie for his alliance on their brand. So there you go. That was the 2002 draft. A very interesting one, quite entertaining, quite unexpected at points, and quite all over the place in terms of picks, I think. I think some of the choices of picks could have been reversed. I think putting Brock Lesnar at number 7 was pretty stupid on behalf of the team, and putting frickin' Rikishi above him. But anyways, there were some interesting picks there. I think it's kind of weird that not all the championships were decided. The main ones, of course, the Hardcore and European were decided, as well the Intercontinental Championship, I think. But yeah, other championships were not on this, so it's interesting to see. There were obviously other drafts made outside of this online, but yeah, that was interesting. I think the choice of not having that many drafts take place is a good idea, because it means that the focus is put on the main wrestlers drafted, which I think is a good idea. And it was interesting to see how the two kind of GMs kind of interacted, because it kind of foreshadows what's to come with the big war between the two. The put downs of the show, I think the 1 hour and a half restricted it a little bit, and having all of these little matches in between kind of also restricted it. But anyways, that's kind of by the by. I think what SmackDown we get a nice kind of looking draft. I think Raw gets a bit more powerful, but for what we get, I think it's very good. Especially, of course, in the likes of The Rock, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and Hollywood Hulk Hogan. So a lot of great wrestlers there. Some famous and some less so, who are building up to becoming famous. And I also like that it's quite a varied roster there. There's some good wrestlers there. And also the introduction of the hardcore division is going to be cool to see on the show. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic of the show and how it develops over time. Just as a little anecdote to this, or a little extra, I'm going to list some of the other wrestlers who got drafted after the show online to SmackDown. Now, I'll forget about Raw, because we're not going to be doing Raw reviews, we're going to be doing SmackDown reviews. So, let's go forth. Number 11, sorry, I did number 11 there, was Edge. Who do we have here that I can find? Chris Jericho was drafted to SmackDown after the show. Also Ivory, the Hurricane, interestingly enough, Al Snow, Lance Storm, Diamond Dallas Page, Tori Wilson, Scotty 2 Hotty, Stacy Keibler, Christian, Test, Farouk, Taz, Hardcore Holly, Val Venus, and Perry Saturn. So there you go, guys. Thank you guys for watching. This has been episode 1 of the Retro SmackDown reviews, I think is what we're going to call it. And I'll see you in episode 2. Well, technically it will be episode 1. This was episode 0, to be honest. So episode 1, we're officially starting off the SmackDown reviews with the first ever post-draft one. So let's go, and make sure to stay along for the ride. And I'll make sure to make a playlist so you can watch all of these in order as well.